Hello, my name is David Swords and I'm with eBook Library. The tutorial that you're about to watch is aimed at showing you how the EBL Patron interface works. If you're watching this tutorial, almost surely you know that EBL is working with WNYLRC or New York 3Rs on a pilot program for a patron-driven acquisition. And so what we've done and what you've done is put records for books in your catalogs that people can go about finding in their normal ways as they go about their normal research. And when they find one of those books that's available through this program, a book which oftentimes will not be owned by New York 3Rs, when they find one of those books, there's a URL that they can click if they're interested in looking at it further. And what happens then is they are asked to log in, and the individual patron would log in using their normal campus or um, login username and password. So this is not something that they invent for EBL. If they're a public library patron, then there's a bit of a different procedure. But at any rate, what a patron would do once they find one of these books, click the URL, is they would have to log in so that they can come to the page that you see before you now. So what I've done is let's imagine that in one of your catalogs I found a book called The American Presidents Ranked by Performance, and I've gone ahead and clicked on the URL. I've logged in, and here I am at the bibliographic data for that record. At this point, the patron can spend as much time as they like looking at the information that's here. So let's spend a few minutes talking about some of that information. First of all, there's obvious. There's a citation with the usual metadata that goes along with that, and things that some of which won't be interesting to your patrons, like the Library of Congress catalog number, or the Dewey number. But other things that will and could be useful, and they can see, for example, a summary of the book. Some of these are fairly lengthy, but should give them a pretty good sense of whether or not this book would be useful to look further at. They can also move around and look at the table of contents. That can oftentimes be a clue as to whether or not, and so you can see, right off the bat that this is a book about each president in turn, and more than one chapter on some of them. I'll go back to the details. There are a couple of other things that a person could do at this point. They could, and this is very useful, email this link that got them to this book to themselves, so that should they need to move on and come back and want to come back to this book another time, they could easily find that in their own email. They could also cite the book, and if they could choose the particular citation style, or at least from among many of the popular ones in colleges and universities that they might want to use to cite it. And they could do a couple of other things that I won't talk about right now, but I'll just indicate to you what they are. They could add it to a collection. We'll come back to that much later in this tutorial. And they could also get to bookmarks. Bookmarks are a term that we use. Actually, we use both terms, notes and bookmarks. Bookmarks are notes that people have taken about a book, and I'll describe that in more detail later. So again, a patron can spend as much time as they like on this screen, and if this looks like a book that could be interesting to them, the next step would be obviously to look at the book. So they click here at the lower left, and this will take me to the full text of the book. At this point, not quite yet, let's wait till I get into it. Things are moving a little bit slowly right now. Once I get into the book itself, then I've got, if New York 3Rs does not own the book, I've got 5 minutes to decide whether or not this is a book that I want. So I have 5 minutes to look through the book. I should also say that 5 minutes we track by session. So if a person were logged in today and spent 5 minutes and didn't make any decisions, or just said, no, I don't want the book at the end of the 5 minutes, and found that book through the email, perhaps, that they'd sent themselves, tomorrow, and went back into it, they could have another 5 minutes. I should add that if this is a book that New York 3Rs owns, if you bought this book through this patron-driven acquisitions program, then the patron has 10 minutes to review it. So let me show you some of the things. So now my 5 minutes has begun, and let me show you some things both about what a patron might do and also some things about the EBL interface that I think will be worth noting. So one of the things that I think makes the 5 minutes a valuable 5 minutes is that I can perform a full text search. So let's say the president that I'm interested in is John F. Kennedy. I can see all of the places in which John F. Kennedy's name appears in the book, and I can jump to those pages. And once I get to the page, so now I'm looking to page 224, I can scroll down. Well, actually, it didn't seem to do what I wanted it to there. Let me try another one. We'll go up to the top. Let's go here. Once I get to the page where John F. Kennedy's name appears, the name will be highlighted in yellow so that, although that highlighting for some reason is not happening in this particular book. That happens on occasion, and rather than restart this demo, I'm going to just keep going. And what should be happening is wherever the name appears, it should appear, be highlighted in yellow. That'll be the rule. You'll see that most of the time. Main point to make here is that as a person that a person can look quickly from place to place within the book to see where Kennedy's name appears and in what context, and should be able to get make a quick assessment during that 5 minutes to whether or not this book would be useful to them. Can always get back to the table of contents and jump around. So now if I wanted to see Abraham Lincoln's chapter, I could quickly move to the chapter on Abraham Lincoln, and you can see. And so here are some other things now about, besides movement in the book, here are some things that maybe are useful to know about the EBL interface. One is it's a scrolling interface. I myself like that a lot. You can change it to a page-to-page interface by changing from image to PDF. And now I could go from page 113 to page 114. Whoops, let me try that again. Well, I seem to be stuck on this page. Let me do it this way. Sorry there. All right, so now there's page 114 and so forth. To me, this is much less satisfying than just using the image. The other thing I can do is I can control the size of the type. So I have a medium size type here, which should be legible for most people, but I can also move to a smaller typeface if I am more comfortable with that, or to a larger typeface if that makes me happier. You saw a moment ago that I could indicate a page that I want to go to, so I could also jump all the way to the end of the book if I like, or to the beginning of the book if I prefer. This is a book with 292 pages. There's a dictionary, usual thing that you expect, so that you can look up words. And there's also a read aloud feature, which I won't demonstrate here, but just say that other librarians have told us that it's very serviceable for sight impaired patrons. So you can see that the 5 minutes that I've been allowed to look at this book is actually a pretty long time. And I can also look back at the bibliographic information if that's of any interest to me. And now let me begin to introduce you to some other concepts within the EBL platform. First of all the books in here are downloadable, and you can print or copy from any of those books. But to perform any of those operations, to download, to print, or to copy, you have to have the book on loan. So if I were, for example, to say that I want to print something right now, I'll get this. And this screen will appear if I wish to print, copy, or download before my 5 minutes in the case of an unowned book, or 10 minutes in the case of a loaned book, are up. Or once the 5 or 10 minutes is up, I'll also get the screen that says yes. I wish to create a loan, or no, I just want to go back to the book. Now, if I just decide to go back to the book, and after my 5 minutes are up, then I won't be able to do that. It'll throw me out to the bibliographic record that we began with, if you recall that. And if I get there and I think, oh, I made a mistake, I really did want to take that book out, then I can simply click, remember that lower left-hand corner where it let us enter the book? I can click that. Up will come that screen that says, do you wish to create a loan? And this time I say yes, and it will take me right back into the book. So let me just go ahead and show you what happens when you say yes, I do create a loan. Again, I want to emphasize that 5 minutes gives a person, I think, a fair bit of time to decide whether or not this book will be useful to them. So now my loan is processed, and specifically what's happened here is your consortium has been charged a percentage of the list price of the book so that this person can make use of it. Now, here are some other things that I want to point out to you. When I wish to print, I can print up to 20% of any book. So remember earlier we saw this. We saw that this book is 292 pages long. Well, about 20% of 292 is about 61. 5 times 61 is close to 292. So I am allowed to print up to 61 pages of this book, and I could do it in any number of ways. I could print a selection. I could print just one page at a time, but I could also go about just choosing, and you can see that as I choose these, the number of pages tallies right on down the line. So let me go ahead and just print a bunch of, or say I want to print, I won't actually do it, of course, print a bunch of pages. And now I'm at 60 pages, and when I hit this next one, you see that 65 pages has gone red. It won't let me print 65 pages because that exceeds the 20-page limit. So now I can go back and I can print 61, and then I could come back and print another page later on if I wanted. So for every book, that patron, that individual patron, can print up to 20%. Similarly, they can copy and paste, but this time it's only 5%. So again, of a 292-page book, 5% is 16 pages. So I could go through the book and I could say I want to copy and paste this page, and I could select the text to do it, and I could copy and paste it, and it would let me print up or copy and paste. Say I wanted to copy the information on the chapters on Lincoln into Word, then I could do that, but I could only do that for 16 pages. The third thing that I might do, besides looking at a book online, is I might wish to download it. And let me spend a few minutes talking about downloading in the EBL universe. First, an important thing about downloading is we have 2 file formats available for many books. One is every book has a PDF available, but about 30% of our books, slightly under 30% really, about 28%, have EPUB files available. I'm sure you already know, but just to say it, for many devices, especially small devices like an iPhone, it's much better to download an EPUB than it is a PDF, because an EPUB file is scalable, whereas a PDF is not. So it'll scale itself to the small screen of an iPhone. So and this book does not, but I'll show you some books later that do have EPUB available. If I wish to download this book, then probably, since it's only available in PDF, I wouldn't want to download it to an iPhone. So let me tell you about what you could download to. First of all, any computer. I'm using an Apple computer, but you can also download, of course, to Windows computers. When you download to computers and to most devices, so for example, a Kobo reader or a Sony reader or a Nook, the DRM, the digital rights management software that manages how long you're going to have access to that book, essentially, is Adobe Digital Editions. And our platform senses whether or not you have ADE on your computer. And if you do not, then it'll give you a link to a site where you can get ADE, and you can download it. And once you've got it, then you can download the book automatically. So for most devices, ADE is the digital rights management software. But for the following devices, it is another DRM. And the other DRM is the Blue Fire reader. So if I had an iPad or an iPhone, if I had an Android device, or if I had a Kindle Fire, or any edition of the Kindle Fire, then I would need the Blue Fire reader to download. Just as with Adobe Digital Editions, if our platform will sense whether or not you have that on your device, and if you do not, then we'll send you to the in the case of an Apple device, we'll send you to the App Store so that you can download the Blue Fire reader. And the Blue Fire reader, like ADE, is free. So then you can go ahead and download to that particular device. Now, a couple things about downloading. Once you download to your device, the normal loan length for a New York 3R's library is 1 day, 24 hours. So I'll have access to this file on my device for 24 hours. And at the end of 24 hours, I won't be able to access that anymore. The DRM will prevent me from getting to it. I could, however, go back in and I don't have to download it again, but I could go back in and create another loan, and then I could have it for another 24 hours. Another thing that I think is important to say about downloading is that when you're online, so now I'm using I'm looking at this book online, I can take notes as I go. Remember, we talked about bookmarks and notes, same thing. So I can create a note, and I'll give it a title. Let's see. Based on the recent. So I can hide that note. I could also fix it if I wanted to spell Lincoln correctly. I could delete that note. But here's the important thing is those notes persist after the book has been checked back in. And so those notes actually persist for the life of my account with your library. So whether it's public library or an academic library, as long as I've got a library card in effect, or as long as my username and password are remain the same, then I'll have access to all the notes that I've ever taken. By contrast, if I were to download this book and take notes, I'm on my own. So if I took my notes in Word, for example, I'd have to manage those notes. I'd have to put them in a folder so that I could find them later on, and so forth. So it's maybe somewhat useful for people to take their notes online whenever they can, because all you ever need to get back to this book, if let's say you're at the university and you create a loan for this book and you close your computer up and you go home, but you have Wi-Fi at home, you can open it back up and you can get back to that same book right there at home, and then you could take notes in it online that way. So I think that's all I'm going to say about these features right now, and let me move then to, whoops, I think it's going to throw me out and I'll have to just quickly log back in, but it shouldn't be. Nope, it didn't. Good. Okay. So you can see, for one thing, that I've got, now I'm at my bookshelf. And this goes way back to what we discussed very early on in this session, that when I log in using my campus ID, I create a bookshelf that is my individual bookshelf. No one can get to my bookshelf unless they know my ID. And this can be useful in several ways. One is it shows me what books I've got loans for right now, and that this first book, my loan will be up in 43 minutes. This other book that I just checked out, I have another 23 hours to use that book. I can also, though, see, and I think this is nice, any books that I have accessed. Well, it doesn't matter how long back. It tracks up to 13 or 14 titles. I don't remember exactly how many, but anyway, so I can go back and see, well, what have I been looking at, and back. And so you can see, for example, here much earlier, 4 weeks ago, I looked at a book on this subject that really prompted this tutorial: patron-driven acquisitions. And so I could easily, in other words, get back to any of those books if I wanted. Also, another thing that I could do is I can drag and drop any of these books and put it into a collection. So here's a collection called Montreal, which I misspelled. And now I've got 2 books in it. And so this is, if I come across something that looks interesting to me and I don't have time to look at it today, but I don't want it to go away forever, I can put it into this collection. And now I can go to my Montreal collection, which I take it only has the 1 book in it. I thought it had both, but I guess I must have taken this one out earlier, or the World Trade Organization. So now I've got any of these books that I happen to put in here, or here books that I have on natural selection. So it lets me get back to books that I might have an interest in at any time. So that's what collections are. You can create collections on the fly. If I were to want to put a book in here, it would ask me to create a new collection for it, and I could do that. And so those are collections. I'll also point out that we have something called reserves. New York 3Rs is not using reserves right now, but if you ever know that a book, for example, is being used for a course and think it could profit from being on reserve, then that's something that is doable. I want to call your attention to searching. So full text search is one that I like a lot. What this does, and let me do a full text search since we used Kennedy before. I'll do a full text search on Kennedy. Now, what will happen here is the word Kennedy, and it can be any Kennedy, not just John F. Kennedy, of course. So this is not a very clever search. Any place in any book that New York 3Rs has available for its patrons, it will find that word. So this is a full text search of every book that you've made available to your patrons. So I'm going to run that search. And I have a lot more books available than New York 3Rs. This is not, I'm not in your interface, but you can see here, here's the assassination of John Kennedy, and John Kennedy gets probably most attention, but there are other things. I could also refine the search simply using these facets over here on the left. So I can see there are already 200 and some odd 33 books, was it? 222 books available this year that have to do with Kennedy, that have the word Kennedy in them. They're German books, they're Spanish books, they're books in these various subjects. And if I want to, I can remove all the filters and I can get back. So that full text search is a pretty nice way of looking at everything all at once. There's also, just to show you, an advanced search. This is something that won't be any great news to you. It's what you'd expect. So you can use keyword searches, and you can condition that in any number of ways. We've already seen full text. You can search by series, Dewey numbers, LC numbers, a lot of things. I mentioned also that we have PDF and EPUB. So one search you could run is just let me see only books that have, maybe on Kennedy, that come with EPUB files, because I know I'm going to download this to a device where a PDF won't do me any good. So all of these books are available in EPUB format. So if I were to look at the best Australian science writing, I get here, I can look at that. Now I can go into the book. And once I get into this book on Australian science writing in 2012, they're quick to get that out. And if I say I want to download it, then you can see that it's available to me either as an EPUB, which is the preferred choice whenever it's there, or a PDF. And you can see that this one I can print 50 pages, and again, that's 20% of the book and so forth. A couple of other things. I won't take too much more of your time, but things that are important to know. Most important, remember we talked about notes or bookmarks. Again, they're the same thing. So, and I said that you can get back to any note that you've ever taken. So here's all the notes that I've ever taken on any book that I've looked at, and mostly given a demonstration of. I'm not that scholarly. And so here, for example, the one that is one that I took a note on earlier today. Here's one on art history. So one of the things I can do is I can get back to those notes, and I could export the notes. I don't have to have the book taken out to do it, and I can export them just as text. Or if I have RefWorks or EndNotes available to me, I could export them in any of those formats. So I can export my notes. I could also use this just to get back to my book and back to the notes that I've taken online. Again, keeping in mind, as I said earlier, that these are only the notes that this person has taken online. They're not notes that a person would have taken offline. So and I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to go over today. Here, we'll just get back and let me sum up again, maybe for you quickly. A person will find these books in your catalog. They'll click a link. They'll log in. It will take them to that bibliographic screen that we talked about. They can spend as much time as they like there. But once they click into the book itself, then they have, if New York 3 R's does not own the book, they have 5 minutes to look at it. If you own it, they have 10 minutes. And if during the 5 or 10-minute browse period they wish to print, copy, or download, then they'll be asked to create a loan. If they say no, they'll just go back to the book until the 5 minutes is up. Or if they say yes, then a loan will be created. New York 3 R's will be charged if it's a book that you don't own, and the person will go on about their business. So that's it. I hope this has been a useful session. If you have questions, then please feel free to get in touch with me. Again, my name is David Swords. That's spelled Swords. My email is david.swords@EB as in boy, LIB as in boy.com. So david.swords@eblib.com. I hope this proves to be a very useful tool for your patrons and that it lasts for a long time. So thanks very much for your time and for your attention.